Mayor Stutzman, we do have a quorum, and it is 10 o'clock. Whenever you're ready, we're ready to get started.
Hello, this is Dr. Deb Fleming. I'm here finally.
Hi, Dr. Fleming. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't get it on my iPad. That's what? So, because I didn't have the number to be able to get on there, you know, for the pin thing or whatever. I'm like, what? I didn't have that to get on the Google thing, so I had to get on my phone. So I'm sorry.
Hey, James, are we ready to go?
Yes, Mayor, we do have a quorum of members present, and it is just a little past 10, so we are good to start when you're ready.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Let's just listen to the background music for a while.
And it's a good elevator hold music.
Hey, Zach, I see that you're talking, or James, whoever's in the conference room, but I can't hear anything.
Mayor Jenkins, Mayor Wood, Commissioner Groninger, can anyone hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, James.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
All right. Zach, if you could just chat.
I'm not getting any audio. You might need to move ahead with the meeting, and I'll just see if I can connect another way.
Yeah, it may be on your end. Mayor Center, can I call an audible here and ask you to start to chair the meeting as you would be our second vice chair?
Okay. Yes, sir.
All right. So we do have a quorum of members present. So if you would like to get us started, and then Mayor Stutzman can join with.
Do we need a roll call?
No, we do not need a roll call. We do have a quorum, so we're able to proceed.
All right, minutes for the February 10th meeting.
This is Phil Jenkins. I'll make a motion to approve.
Mayor Wood, second. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or waving your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Financial report?
Good morning. Can you all hear me? You should all
read you
have
loud
the
and clear.
January 2021 financial report in your packets. For year-to-date expenses for the fiscal year ending January 31st, we have $3,174,610.57. It's about 40% of our annual fiscal year budget. Our cash balance at the end of January was $2,758,911.94. And our cash disbursements for the month of January was $401,072.13. Does anyone have any questions? If not, I'd like to ask for the board's approval of the January financial report.
I'll make a motion to approve, Commissioner Groninger.
Second. Mayor Robertson.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by waving your hand. All opposed? Thank you. Secretary report?
Yeah, the secretary report here, just there is a few items there on some administrative modifications. Just make sure you look at your packet for those, please.
If there's someone with music on in the background, could you mute, please? Okay. James, is that all we need on?
The secretary's report is informational. All of that
Okay.
information can be found online and in your packets, so there's no action needed on that item.
Okay. Let's go on to old business with transit.
All right. So for transit items, we have two resolutions before you. The resolutions are Resolution 721 and Resolution 821. Resolution 721 and 821, these are old business items, and that's why they're ordered here in this agenda. You approved, the board approved these items last month. However, it came to our attention that these are for 5310 applications. The 5310 program is typically an 80-20 program, but because of CARES Act funding and some other items, the INDOT was asking that these items be 100% federal rather than the typical 80-20 split. So Resolution 721 and 821, we're just asking to modify these to be 100% federal rather than the traditional 80-20, which was approved last month. So that is why these items are under old business and back on the agenda, is to make that change so that they are 100% federal. I could answer any questions on Resolution 721 or 821 at this time. Otherwise, I would be asking for your approval of these resolutions.
Motion to approve, Commissioner Wyrick.
Second, Councilman Root.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by waving your hand. All opposed? Thank you.
Mark,
Yes, sir.
I have something going on with my video, so I'm back here waving and you can't see me, I'm assuming, because it's dark. So my video can't come through.
Okay, that's fine.
So if you would ask, I can,
yeah.
my audio is on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, new business?
Mine too. My video's on. I'm sorry.
Hi, this is Ryan. Into new business in the Fort Wayne District, we have two items under Resolution 921 today. These are both INDOT-initiated resolutions. The first, item A, is on US 20 from the county line of St. Joe and Elkhart County, and it runs to County Road 19 in Elkhart County. This is for the concrete pavement restoration of that roadway. And then item B is also concrete pavement restoration in Silver Lake in Kosciuszko County. This begins south at County Road West 1200 and runs north through Silver Lake to Dixie Drive. Again, also a concrete pavement restoration. If there are any questions, I can take those now. Otherwise, I'd ask for your approval of Resolution 921.
Ryan, just a clarification. The 0921, you've got going to, is it County Road 19 or is it County Road 17?
It's just after County Road 17. It actually ends short of County Road 19, but
Okay.
they only give the mileage, so County Road 19 is approximately where it ends.
All right, thank you for clarifying.
So again, I'd ask for your approval of this Resolution 921.
Commissioner Groninger, I make a motion to approve.
Mayor Jenkins, I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those signify by saying aye or wave.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? Same sign. Okay, go on to the next.
All right, Resolution 1021 is in the LaPorte District in Marshall County. This is on State Road 17. It is for high-friction road surface treatments. These are typically done based on safety recommendations due to runoff road incidents. So there are 3 curves on State Road 17 just north of Culver, in between Culver and Plymouth, that NDOT is asking to include into the tip. So Resolution 1021, again, is for high friction surface treatments. If there are questions, I can take them now. Otherwise, I'd ask for your approval on Resolution 1021.
I'll entertain a motion.
Susie Wyrick, second.
Was there a motion?
Mayor Wood, motion to approve.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I thought you said that a motion.
Yeah, we have a motion. Further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye or wave. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
Okay. Fort Wayne and LaPorte District?
Yes, so in Fort Wayne and LaPorte District, we have Resolution 1121. This happens annually. It's the introduction to of the UPWP projects into a new fiscal year in the TIP. So items A through C all involve the UPWP. Item A is for the addition of pictometry flown in 2021, this coming calendar year. Item B and C, item B is in the South Bend urbanized area, and item C is in the Elkhart Goshen urbanized area. Both are for the Partners for Clean Air program for the upcoming fiscal year. If there's no questions in regards to Resolution 1121, I'd ask for your endorsement.
And just for those who aren't familiar, the UPWP is the Unified Planning of Work Program. This is a document that MACOG prepares every year, which outlines how we will be spending our federal planning funds on transportation-related kind of work items. The UPWP will be presented at the April Policy Board meeting. It's in draft right now, and NDOT and Federal Highway are reviewing that, and we should be getting those comments in about 2 to 3 weeks. So you would expect to see the full document presented to you next month. However, from a timing perspective, these items need to be added to the Transportation Improvement Program now to make sure that we could meet a July obligation. And as Ryan mentioned, these are pretty standard recurring items. These aren't any kind of special items that are new. You'll recall that the pictometry, this is the second flight on this contract. So this is an item that we have approved before.
Thanks, James. I was wondering what the Partners for Clean Air campaign was.
Yeah, so the Partners for Clean Air, this is an item that we've been doing since the 90s. Our region was non-attainment under the Clean Air Act. And so we have always programmed funds for programming that would be focused on voluntary ways to reduce emissions. This has been done through either kind of public media campaigns that we've done in the past. In more recent years, we have partnered with South Shore Clean Cities to focus on improving municipal and school fleets, so doing fleet audits and considering trying to update fleets and pursue alternate fuel funding, as well as then doing items related to kind of electric vehicles, a number of elements related to that. Additionally, each year, non-COVID years, I would say, we have an event, our Partners for Clean Air Luncheon. You'll hear a little bit more about the fact that we're trying to do that event still this year. It may look different. You'll hear about that during the staff update, but that's an opportunity to hear from IDEM as well as then honor kind of local businesses and nonprofits that have taken voluntary efforts to reduce emissions. So that's kind of largely in broad brushes what that program focuses on. And we're able to use congestion mitigation and air quality funding, which you'll see noted on the agenda as CMAC, to fund that program.
Thanks.
Commissioner Groiner, I make a motion to approve.
Mayor Robertson, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye or a wave.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, moving into resolution 1221. This is a transit resolution in the LaPorte County. So these are all for Transpo. You might remember from last year or the years before, this is a recurrent process that happens around this same time every year when transit agencies relook at the availability of funds through different grants. The first item A through D are all 5307 grants, and I'll just walk you through them now. Item A is for the deletion of a project of the rehabilitation and renovation of the transfer facility under 5307. Item B is for the purchase of miscellaneous equipment. This is the increase of about $318,000 to that project. Item C is for acquiring miscellaneous support equipment. And item D is for the tire lease program. Item E is now for the addition of a project, the rehab and renovate transit facility. And as I said, there are different grants that can be applied for. This is 5339. So Transpo is moving money from the 5307 funds to the 5309 funding. And so if there are any questions in regards to resolution 1221, I'd entertain them now. Otherwise, I'd ask for your approval.
Mayor Jenkins, move to approve 1221.
Mayor Wood, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye or wave a hand. Thank you.
Aye.
All right, resolution 13, 14, and 18 are all related items. They are all for the Section 5310 grant program. As you recall, last month and earlier in this agenda, we approved resolutions for Elder House in Napanee, as well as Riverview Adult Day Health Center related to Section 5310. 5310 is a grant program for providing services to individuals that are either disabled or that are senior. And this is a competitive grant program that is administered by the state of Indiana for, in our region, that would be for Elkhart, Casiaso, and Marshall counties. This is for 3 additional applications that would be submitted during this call. The first is for Marshall Stark Development Center. They would be procuring 3 low-floor minivans with lifts, as well as then 2 12-passenger medium transit vans with lifts. You'll note that these items are being applied for at 100% federal funding, as we previously discussed in the old business item of this agenda. Resolution 1421 is a addition to Riverview Adult Day Health Center. When they found out that it was 100% funding, they have additional vehicle needs, and knowing that they might not have to provide match, they then submitted for an additional 1 8-passenger transit vehicle. And then the last item in this section is Resolution 1821. This is from Council on Aging of Elkhart County. It is for one low-floor minivan with a lift. So those are the three resolutions, all related to 5310. What we are asking for is an endorsement of these applications. And then if these projects are awarded funding at a later date, we would be adding them to the Transportation Improvement Program. I can answer any questions on any of these items, Resolution 13, 14, and 18. If there aren't any questions, then we could just do one motion for all three resolutions.
I actually kind of have a question on all three resolutions. So when you say funding at a later date, does that mean it's going to come back through once you've verified the applications, or what's the
Yeah, it's a great
process?
question. So the process is that what we're actually doing here related to these resolutions is they are submitting an application to the state, and then the state will review those applications and see if they are able to fund them. So what we are doing is saying that these projects are consistent with our human services transportation plan, which is kind of linking gaps in the network and where services are needed. And so we're saying it's consistent, and if NDOT awards this project money, we're supportive of it, essentially. So really, it's an endorsement of the grant application. And then NDOT will give us a list of who they funded. And then at a later agenda, once we have that list of who they funded, we would actually add the project into the Transportation Improvement Program. I know that's very process-oriented, so hopefully that clarifies it. But essentially, this is approving the application, and later we would add the money if they get an award.
Commissioner Wyrick, move to approve. Or endorse, I guess.
Commissioner Groninger, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye or wave your hand.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, Resolution 1521. This is for the 5307 funding. 5307 funding is the urban area formula funding. This is an annual process that happens essentially when the Federal Transit Administration has its budget and numbers. It allocates funding to an urbanized area. They do not allocate it directly to providers, transit service providers. It's provided to an urbanized area. We then have a process where MACOG has an agreement between these three transit agencies, the South Shore Line or NICTID, Transpo, and Niles Dial-A-Ride, and then also with our partner agency, SWMPIC, the Southwestern Michigan Plan Commission, which is our kind of sister agency up in Michigan. The process is then that the apportionment comes to us, which the total apportionment this year was $4,332,175, which was about an $8,000 increase over last year's apportionment. We then run the numbers through a series of formulas based on kind of ridership and other data units that are provided by FTA. And then that formulates a split between bus and rail. And then we work through modeling different scenarios for these transit providers on if Transpo got this much more or Niles got this much more, what that would do. We usually put together about 5 scenarios each year. And then we have a meeting with all of these agencies to discuss really where those numbers should fall. After holding that meeting, all 3 transit providers unanimously agreed to what we call scenario 5, which is basically they get the same percentage of funds that they have in a previous fiscal year. So based on that agreement, NICTID would get about 1.3 million. You can see on the agenda and on the screen that full amount. Transpo would get about 2.7, and Niles Dial-A-Ride would get about 259,000. That's the agreement that they unanimously came up to for this fiscal year 21. I'll also then present the other two items because they're also related. Resolution 1621 is for 5337 funding. This is funding that's called State of Good Repair, and the eligible entities for State of Good Repair are either transit providers that are providing rail service or that are providing bus rapid transit service. We do not have any providers that provide bus rapid transit. We only have a rail provider, and that's NICTID or the South Shore Line. So per those agreements, NICTID would get the full amount here, which is 2.9 million. Resolution 1721 is then the last item kind of related to the annual apportionment, and it is for section 5339 funding. 5339 funding, that program title is called Bus and Bus Facilities. The bus and bus facilities funding is a smaller apportionment. It's $321,713. Transpo and Niles Dial-A-Ride meet and discuss their needs, their capital needs. This can fund purchasing new buses and rehabbing bus facilities, as noted in the title. And they discussed those, and this year they agreed that Transpo would get 261,000 and Niles would get 60,000. So I can answer any questions related to this process, related to the apportionments or resolution 15, 16, and 17. If there are no questions related to these items, I think one motion for approving resolution 15, 16, and 17 would be appropriate.
Mayor Jenkins, motion to approve.
Commissioner Wyrick, motion a second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye or wave. Aye. Thank you.
All right, the next item under other actions, these are two items that are done annually, and it's also kind of related to our unified planning of work program processes. So the first is an endorsement of our self-certification statement. The self-certification statement is basically a listing of items that are federal requirements and that we are agreeing and self-certifying that we will follow those items related to kind of the federal rules. This is items like the Clean Air Act or the Civil Rights Act, like Title VI, a number of different elements kind of related to that. These are all items that we have followed in the past, and we are just self-certifying that we will continue to follow those items. Additionally, then, the next item is an endorsement of our statement regarding our MPO certification review. This is something that we do annually as well. You'll recall last year we did our certification review. Federal Highway, Federal Transit, and INDOT all participate and lead that, and they then provide either findings or corrective actions or commendations. We had no issues, we had no findings, and so each year we put together a statement that is regarding the MPO certification review and when the next one is, and that essentially will work on any findings if we had them, which we have no findings. So these items are all then placed inside of our Unified Planning of Work program and submitted to show that as we work on our next year, we will continue to follow those kind of recommendations and federal laws. So those are the two endorsements that I would be seeking, so that we can continue the process of putting together our Unified Planning of Work program. I can answer any questions on those, or I think one motion could be sufficient for both endorsements.
Commissioner Groninger moved to approve.
Do we have a second?
Mayor Jenkins, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye or a wave. Okay,
All right, so now for the staff update. The first item that wanted to make everyone aware, we mentioned this at our last board meeting. Have a little bit more information, but it's still not completely final. In the second round of stimulus funding, there was a section in the coronavirus response and relief supplemental appropriations that provided funding for transportation for roads and highways. This is then being allocated to urban areas, as well as then there's going to be an apportionment for the rural areas that'll be administered by Kathy McCallup's department out of NDOT Central Office. For our urban area funding, we have final agreements on what that will be, which is the allocation will be about 2.6 million. We are working through with NDOT how exactly that funding will work. As it is in the bill, it is 100% funding, but there are caveats of if it's used for capital projects, that it may be for a lesser federal share, like an 80-20. So we're working through program guidance with NDOT. We do have an allocation of about 2.6 million that'll be used for the urban areas. We'll be communicating with you all in the coming months. Hopefully, I believe by April, we would be having a call or some sort of notification to you all of how those funds can be used and what our plan for that will be. It may be a mix of adding this funding onto existing projects to fill funding gaps, and or doing things like paving projects that were done during the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. So I just want to make sure that you're aware. Last month, there was still a lot of questions over allocations and a number of items. We're working through that with NDOT. We do have an allocation now, and now we're just kind of working through program guidance. So we'll get you more information on that as it kind of develops, but wanted to provide you that update. Next, we do have a few items related to other grant funding, and Elena will be presenting on Next Level Trails.
Good morning, this is Elena Parrish. As James mentioned, I have an update on Next Level Trails. The first regarding that is that last Thursday, the Round 2 awards were announced by the Indiana DNR. Trails in our region, there are two that receive funding. The first is the New River Greenway for the city of Elkhart, which closes the gap between downtown Elkhart and the Maple Heart, so there will be a continuous connection from Elkhart to Goshen. The second award was for the Pumpkin Vine Nature Trail, and this is an extension on the east end into downtown Shipshewana. So we're very excited to see this funding come into our region and help expand our trail network. The second announcement related to Next Level Trails is that the third round will be in the year 2021. Applications will be accepted from November 1st through December 1st. There will be a total of $35 million available, $25 million for regional projects and $10 million for local projects. The DNR is also planning to host an informational webinar. I believe it'll be this summer, but they will have more details to be announced once they're all worked out. So if you're interested in applying, or if you'd like to talk through a project with me or learn anything else about the Next Level Trails program, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, and just a quick item that I want to make sure that everyone's aware of. Next Level Trails is not, at this point, a permanent program. It was utilizing funding from the toll road kind of increases a few years ago, and was being used to then fund this program. The initial investment that they had outlined for Next Level Trails was, I believe, around $90 million. They've awarded about 54.3 million. So if they are anticipating awarding 35 million in round 3, this will be presumably the final round of Next Level Trails, unless that program receives longer term funding. So if you have been holding off on submitting a transformative trail where it is significant mileage, now would be the time to make sure to submit it, because this program may not exist in calendar year 22 for you to submit an application. So we are highly encouraging our local governments that that really take a look at what trail needs you have, and we've been having communications with staff right now to try and figure out some larger projects that have legs that could move forward with a December 1 submittal. But I just want you all to be aware that this program may not exist in the future, and so it is important, if you plan on applying for a larger project, that you be prepared to do that in round 3.
James, you are so good at being subliminal and beating around the bush.
Yeah, I was trying to be subtle in that.
James, a quick
That's
question.
better.
Yes.
If we're a stellar community, does that affect us at all, or?
Not at all. No, this is state money, and this is administered by DNR. So if you're stellar, you're not precluded in any way. So that is not an issue.
Thank you.
James, did I hear right that they were looking to prioritize trail connections between communities or existing trails?
Yeah. So the whole concept, not whole concept, but one of the major tenets of the program was trying to make connections between communities. Additionally, the governor had outlined that much of this program was to try and get more Hoosiers closer to trails. I don't remember the stats of what their goal was, but they're not looking to build redundancy, they're looking to make new connections. So if there are opportunities to connect the Riverwalk to Capitol Avenue Trail or something like that, I think those would be great opportunities. They are definitely trying to make those connections. So when you look at some of the projects that have been funded in our region so far, you have the State Road 933 trail, which connected the LaSalle Trail kind of into the county trail system into the city of South Bend's trail system that then connects into Mishawaka. So there's a major gap that connects really Mishawaka all the way through South Bend, through the county, and up into Michigan. So major connection point. Another project that it funded was down in Syracuse, where it was connecting Syracuse kind of around the lake there and a boardwalk, and connecting it kind of more south towards its middle school, and then hopefully towards North Webster. And I know North Webster is looking at a potential submittal to go from their town up to the middle school to kind of try and meet this trail system. So those are some examples. And this last round, the city of Elkhart was funded, which really helps connect the city's system to the Maple Heart. And then also Shipshewana was funded, which connects the Pumpkin Vine into Shipshewana. So these kind of major connection points, even though the state deemed many of those projects as local, they are still major connection points. So that is kind of at the core of this program.
All right, next update on grants. This is also a grant program that will be ending after this year. The the Volkswagen Environmental Mitigation Trust Fund. This is the third and final round of the on-road, non-road vehicle repower and replacement program. We've known this is coming since 2017, and this is the third round of that opportunity. It'll be anticipated to be, the solicitation will be out this month. There are a few changes limiting the number of diesel to diesel replacement projects that will be eligible. But if you have any project ideas or know of any school corporations that are interested, please let me know so we can start working on that in advance. The next item, as James had mentioned earlier, Partners for Clean Air. Traditionally, we host a luncheon in April. Right now, we're looking possibly at a virtual event. Do save the date for April 28th on that. We are also looking for our annual award nominations. So if you have any ideas, this is a picture of Wani School's propane buses and fueling station. Other recent awardees include the Toll Road, Keystone RV, Plymouth Products, Tippecanoe Valley School Corporation. So if you have any ideas for deserving projects within about the last year or so being implemented, please let us know.
Hello, everyone. This is Zach Drips. I'm giving the update on our Goshen Transit Expansion Study. If you may recall, this spring, we did a first phase of this, or sorry, this fall. I said spring. Thank you, James. We did a first phase of this study to ask the question about where do you want service to be throughout Goshen. So right now we're looking at a couple of different options. You want to advance the slide. So we did that survey. Here's a couple of responses back. We had over 200 respondents to this survey, and many of that told us, that they were, a lot of those were not current writers. So again, we were kind of reaching those who might have an interest in writing in the future, asking them questions about why and what kind of can we do to get them on the bus. And then the next slide then kind of talks about the top locations that we're looking to serve. Goshen Hospital and the Oaklawn Center were two of the highest requested areas, but you also can see a few others on the slide here. And then the map, again, kind of visually represented where those locations are. So the team here at MACOG then took some time to kind of consider all those locations, considering the current routes and current systems we have and what kind of options we might place for future routes. Next slide. So we came up with a basic two different concepts to kind of organize our thoughts. And one is to keep the red line the same. It's a system that's been in place for a long time, served the community well and our region well that way. But to build a northern loop and a southern loop to kind of expand those opportunities throughout the city, provide multiple connections with the red line, and kind of provide those more options that way. The other concept we came up with was to actually shorten the red line to end in downtown Goshen. So that way it's a route that connects downtown Elkhart with downtown Goshen. This would give us the opportunity to create up to 3 different new routes. And so we would keep the northern route that we kind of talked about in the first concept, and then create a new southern route and a central loop that kind of help, again, further those expansions and connections that way. So right now, just this last week, we launched a interactive survey online for residents and riders to take that kind of talks about these two different concepts and presents several options within those concepts. Next slide. So this survey is available through nearly the end of the March here. It's available on our project website, which is goshentransit.interurbantrolley.com. We also have paper surveys available in a couple locations around Goshen, and we're looking for other opportunities to get the word out and to expand and get feedback in on this. But the goal here is to get an idea of which one of these concepts are more preferred, what options of the individual routes that we propose kind of makes the most sense. This will lead to a third phase of this study, which then does a more detailed analysis of that preferred opportunity and gets that kind of preferred proposal to Goshen and for us to consider as a final option for implementation. I'll take any questions right now on that or any other further points you might have.
Zach, I'd just like to thank you, this is Mayor Stutzman, for all the work you guys are putting into this. This is going to be very significant for our community, for both residential and business, as far as reaching everybody. So we really appreciate all the work.
Yeah, thank you. And we've had, again, great responses from residents on this. I'm really excited to kind of get this, this phase out and really get some good input from the residents. Great, thank you. So, again, if there are any other questions, anything else, you can let me know. Thanks.
Thanks, Zach. An item that we were recently approached by Purdue Center for Regional Development is related to State of Broadband and Digital Inclusion Fellows. So let me break down both of these. So as you all might be familiar, our region, when you look at, say, the FCC maps for the level of broadband in our region, those maps basically say our region is great when it comes to broadband. It's because the FCC maps are inherently flawed, and FCC will admit that. They acknowledge that they are flawed. So why are they flawed? It's because of the reporting systems. Basically, if there is a provider that provides 25 up and 3 down service, but it costs $3,000 a month, then it's considered that our region has that service, even if it's not affordable service, as well as then just kind of the other reporting mechanisms for that. What this means is that when you look at, say, the Office of Community and Rural Affairs and kind of the state's initiatives around next level connections and the broadband programs, is that when you look at that, it then, they're using those FCC maps to make initial determinations on areas that could be eligible. Now, there are exception processes, but you have to show kind of a preponderance of proof that it's reasonable to assume that that kind of service isn't actually available in, say, a census tract. In order to do that, we are trying to put together a report where Purdue could help us kind of map out through publicly available data, kind of a regional state of broadband report. I know this is something that all of our communities have constantly been working on, the topic of broadband, whether it's in St. Joe County and their EDA-funded project to kind of go out towards the west and provide fiber optics there, whether it's Elkhart County and the efforts that they are doing to expand fiber, whether it's in Kosciuszko County, and you see the announcements that Kosciuszko REMC has made, as well as then kind of the initiatives that the commissioners have been working on with the public safety towers, as well as then Marshall County and the work that they did to expand Choice Light down to Plymouth many years ago when it was called MetroNet, and then kind of the broadband pilot that they were a part of a few years back. What we'd like to do is try and consolidate this information into a succinct report that kind of shows what the landscape is for the region, and then hopefully be able to mount better cases for why we need funding in our rural areas as well as in kind of our micro-urban areas, and can hopefully better compete on the state level. Because if you've seen where the awards have been and really where the applications have come, has largely been more southern Indiana, because on the FCC maps, they immediately have issues, and so it's easier to make that justification. So we're planning to work with Purdue to put together that kind of state of broadband report. Would be happy to talk with any of you about that or answer any questions, as well as then another item that they are working on is putting together an application to the AmeriCorps for digital inclusion fellows. These fellows would be housed within regions like MACOG, kind of around the state, and they could be working on a number of different items of working with local governments on digital kind of practices for public meetings or for assisting them with a number of different elements, as well as then an area that we're keenly interested in is they could also be working with, say, Main Street organizations or local chambers of commerce to work with businesses on competing in the digital spaces so that our Main Street businesses have a better opportunity of being kind of digitally included in kind of the current commerce situation. So we are looking at working with Purdue on potentially housing a digital inclusion fellow It's through AmeriCorps, so they would not be a MACOG employee, but this would be kind of a similar relationship that we've had in the past on other programs, like when we originally had a Soul Smart kind of fellow, which ended up being Leah, which I think has been an amazing asset for our organization, and Leah was able to continue on with MACOG and full-time employment. And so we are looking at this digital inclusion fellow. Obviously, this is something that it'll depend on if Purdue gets approved and what that will look like. So I don't have a great timeline yet for that, but we think that the work that they could do could be very impactful and could assist some of our partners like at Main Street organizations. So would be happy to answer any questions related to either of these items, but wanted to make sure that the board was aware of these items.
Hey, James.
Yes.
How much influence do you think you're going to have if we work on this project and this broadband and in digital inclusion and moving the needle on the 25 megs standard? Because one of the things that we're constantly struggling with is 25 megs is the standard that's established by the federal government, and in so much of the legislation for prohibitive development, yet 25 megs is DSL.
Yeah, really it should be like 100.
At a minimum, right?
Yeah, at a minimum. 25.3 is pretty antiquated at this point, but it is kind of the baseline that FCC has established. I could get you more information on that. I know that there was recent movements to try and get the FCC to update that standard from 25.3, and I know that they are evaluating and looking at that. I'm trying to see if I can pull up that information that I was looking at just the other day, but that is something that they are looking at. But I think at a minimum, what we would be able to hopefully seek to achieve is a baseline understanding and hopefully be able to mount a better case at how our region isn't necessarily achieving a 25.3 at this point. Not only do we want to seek to achieve a 100 minimum, but that a 25.3 is still not necessarily obtained in some of our communities, even though FCC maps say that they are. And so I definitely think this is an area that we could provide some technical assistance, and we have a willing kind of partner and research center in Purdue Center for Regional Development. And so we want to be able to assist communities in kind of taking on that conversation. I don't know if that helps answer your question, but I know that, what I was reading the other day is that there are a number of senators that are trying to move the FCC to consider 100 up, 100 down, and that the 25.3 was really something that has been around since 2015, and at this point is somewhat not necessarily the standard we should be seeking to achieve, but I think it will be an ongoing conversation. But there are a number of indicators on the federal level that if the Biden administration is continually talking about potential infrastructure packages in the future, and when they're talking about infrastructure, they're not only meaning roads, they're also meaning a number of other items like broadband. And so I just want to make sure that our region has the best chance to compete if those funds become available. All right, the next three items are just kind of quick updates to make sure that the board is aware of different procurement opportunities that we have out on the street that are for third-party contracting and consulting opportunities. So the first item is for our Regional Disaster Recovery and Economic Resiliency Plan. This was a plan that we received money from the U.S. Economic Development Administration as part of kind of a CARES Act allocation. The majority of that grant that they provided us was for institutional capacity building, so really providing some additional staff and some additional equipment and a number of things related to that matter. But one of the other items that they wanted each region to tackle is a disaster recovery and economic resiliency plan. That was pretty much the directive that they gave. There was no additional details of what that plan would include. And really, the majority of historical kind of plans related to disaster recovery are much more focused on natural disaster recovery rather than, say, something like a pandemic. So this will definitely be a new item for many regions to tackle, but we put together our scope of work, kind of our initial concepts, and kept it pretty broad. This RFP, as you'll recall, was issued in January, and submittals were just at the, I believe, at the end of March 1st. We received a number of proposals. We actually received 9 proposals, and those proposals were submitted from American Structure Point, AR360, Fourth Economy, HWC, who is partnering with Purdue Center for Research and Development, and then Rundell Ernstberger, Taylor Siefker Williams, the Troyer Group, Thomas P. Miller and Associates, and then Yard and Company. Those were all taken under advisement. We are working through the final scorings, and we will probably be notifying those vendors today of who will be seeking additional interviews from. We'll probably be narrowing that down to, based on the initial scores, to about 3 firms to then do interviews, and then hopefully be able to finish all that contracting and everything this month, beginning of April, to really get that process started. That's an $80,000 scope of work. The next item is for a regional freight and mobility plan. MACOG constantly is studying transportation-related items. We have previous freight plans, but at this point, those are from the 2004 and 2007 for a commodity flow, and then for kind of a overall truck route inventory. So they're rather dated at this point, and we really need to have a better, more up-to-date understanding of freight mobility, the challenges, if there are potential infrastructure projects to prioritize, and a number of other, just kind of understanding a good baseline outside of what our staff already understands. This would not only, it'll predominantly be focused on roads and highways, but it'll also look at rail, pipeline, and other kind of freight movements. I know the airport has already done some freight studies, so it won't necessarily focus heavily on air. We'll just continue to consolidate their information into this report. But it'll kind of look at those elements. This was issued at the end of February. It will be due on April 1st. This is not an elaborate April Fool's joke. That is just where the schedule kind of fell. So it will be due on April 1st. This is a larger kind of scope of work because we anticipate that it might span multiple fiscal years. So I believe the scope of work was between 100 and 150,000 for this project. So we'll be seeing hopefully some strong interest in that. I know a number of firms had reached out initially related to that. So I'm hopeful that we will get again another competitive proposals. I know it's a lot for staff to review 9 proposals and do it in a week or so, but we really appreciate when we have competitive proposals and be able to look through our options. So that is the other item that is out right now. The third item is an item to make you aware of that will be coming out. So MACOG has always been a strong partner with Transpo. MACOG also oversees the transit service in Elkhart and Goshen on the interurban trolley. Transpo last had a comprehensive operational analysis. The year's going to escape me, but it was around 2015 or so. That plan is slightly dated at this point and is needing kind of a relook. The trolley has never really had a independent comprehensive operational analysis in quite a while. And so what this would be is this is a pretty large scope of work. It would be looking at the two transit systems in their entirety, how they work, how they don't work, where there is latent demand, where there is missed opportunities, how each of those routes work, where there need to be better connections, where there need to be more frequency or less frequency. So it's pretty much a comprehensive look at these two transit systems to identify really what are those programmatic, what are those capital kind of items that are needed. This will be, MACOG has secured the funding for that. It will be jointly something that we work on with Transpo. They have been reviewing a draft of that and gave us all of their comments yesterday. So we do anticipate moving that forward in the next few weeks / month to an issuance. As I mentioned, it is a larger scope of work as it is a very large task. When Transpo did this alone, they were in the $160-some thousand kind of price range for more of a basic comprehensive operational analysis. We will be looking at a number of different scenarios. And so our scope of work is estimated at around $300,000 at this point. So that is a large scope of work. We're very excited about it and looking forward to the kind of continual partnership we have with Transpo to really look at a deep dive into those two transit systems to see where there are missed opportunities and potentials for the future. So that'll be coming out before sometime this spring, I would say. So that is a major item and wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that.
So as a quick and final staff update, I wanted to inform you on where we are in the process of the development of the new transportation improvement program for fiscal years 2022 through 2026. We are in the middle of the public comment period, had an open house last night, and the public comment period will be open until March 29th. There are several ways to make a public comment. You can go to our website under the transportation page. You probably find it under our news page. We also have a phone line that has been made public when we sent out our legal ad and our press releases. So we are in this process, and next month we will be bringing you our completed plan for your approval. If there's
Thanks,
any
Ryan.
questions. Yep.
Any questions for Ryan? Okay, privilege of the floor.
Mayor, I did, if no one has anything, I did have one thing that I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of. Obviously, I hope you have all seen in the news that the United States Congress is doing a third round of stimulus through a budget reconciliation process. That vote will be happening today at the House. It passed the House, went to the Senate made changes, so the Senate's version has gone back to the House. Presumably that will pass the House today and will be going to the President for signature. The reason I want to make you aware of it is while the news is going to be reporting on what that means to personal stimulus checks and a number of items, sometimes the items that are for local government are sometimes not necessarily reported. And so I want to make sure that you're aware. The first is a small item, but in the grand scheme of things, it is a large item, which is that the bill includes provisions to increase funding for the Economic Development Administration. You'll recall that in the CARES Act, EDA received $1.5 billion, which they then split up into the institutional capacity grants that I talked about, and then into competitive kind of construction projects. EDA ran through all of that money for Indiana pretty quickly, and there are no more CARES Act EDA kind of construction funds available, as there was a pretty large groundswell of projects that were submitted. This, the American Rescue Plan would provide $3 billion, so a doubling of that funding for the Economic Development Administration for kind of these public work projects that support job and job creation. This would be a doubling. Additionally, from initial conversations with folks at EDA, it does not sound like they would be doing institutional capacity grants. So that sounds like there would be more money than for construction projects. So we had a number of projects lined up for the CARES Act that just either were told no because they ran out of money, or we weren't able to get together in time as that kind of funding was spent expeditiously. So we are trying to gear up to get those projects ready and in the queue so that when EDA opens that call, we can be ready to submit those. So I want to make sure that you all are aware of that. Additionally, the bill includes large provisions for funding, providing funding for the state and local governments. Many of the commissioners already know because I had emailed them a few weeks ago, because the National Associations of Counties had a very nice tool that gave potential estimates of what that funding would be for each county. And that is not a final mark, as it has to go through the Treasury process and all of that. But the estimates, as just an example, for St. Joe County was 53 million. Elkhart County was 40 million. Kosciuszko County was 15 million. And Marshall County was 9 million. This was the amount that was to go to only the county. This is not including amounts that would go to the cities. I don't have great breakdowns on the city figures, unfortunately, but in general, this is sometimes 2 to 5 times as much money as communities received under the CARES Act program. This, the usage of this funding is largely to either replace lost revenues or to do projects to combat kind of problems caused due to the pandemic. It's fairly open uses. I want to make sure that you're aware of it because it is large sums of funds. And if I just want to make sure you have time to think through how you may utilize these funds. If you need any assistance in that, have any questions about that, our staff is always happy to provide assistance or provide any help. So I just want to make sure that you all are aware of those two provisions that would be in the American Rescue Plan.
Thank you, James. Public comment?
We did have a public comment. Our procedures for public comments has been that we ask the public to provide comments prior to the meeting. We did receive one. The public comment was in relation to the bill's going to escape my mind off the top of my head, the bill number in this Indiana General Assembly related to increasing freight tonnage by about 20 additional tons. The potential for that to happen, I think it might be House Bill 1190. The question was kind of in relation to what could this impact be? It sounds like it could be dangerous from a public safety standpoint. The individual was concerned because they ride a motorcycle, and the last thing that they're really wanting to see is additional 20 tons between them and the kind of braking power of trucks. And although they support commerce, it was kind of related to what impacts will this be on local roadways, et cetera. So this bill is currently, it passed the House and in Senate subcommittee. It was there as of, I think, February 24th, hasn't moved forward out of that committee. So I don't know exactly what its future holds. I will say that in 2016, US DOT did study kind of what if we increased freight limit or the weight limits on trucks. What would that do? This was a 2016 study that was required based on moving ahead for progress in the 21st century, MAP 21. Essentially, that study by USDOT said that it was inconclusive, that it raised more questions than they could answer, that there was not reliable information to really understand what that impact would be on the local bridge system or the local road system, that because of state kind of accident reporting databases, there isn't good information on statewide levels of accidents related with, we have good information on accidents related with trucks, but what was the tonnage of that vehicle? What was the number of axles? What was, those items are not always reported or not asked for. Sometimes they're included in the narrative, but not enough to really draw specific inferences of what does this mean. And that's still the case today for a lot of these kind of general questions. So I know INDOT has said that they are neutral on this bill. I don't know, Matt, or if anyone else from INDOT had any other kind of specifics. Increasing weight limits is a giant question mark of what that would mean. You know, is it less safe? Will it do more damage? Those are great questions, but unfortunately, we don't have a great way to answer that based on kind of the data available. So as of this point, we are just watching that bill and seeing what it potentially could do. But I would also turn this over to any other folks on the board, or if INDOT had any comments kind of related to this item.
No, James, I don't have anything to share on that necessarily.
Yep. So that was the one public comment that we did receive.
Thank you, James. And with that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mayor Jenkins, motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Grunninger, second.
Yep.
Motion is second, we'll go for discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye or wave. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. And in future meetings, we do plan to offer this hybrid offering. So we have the fourth floor of the county commissioner or the county St. Joe County Council space reserved.